For nearly 2 years, escaped slaves humiliated the Roman Republic and forced the most powerful state in the Mediterranean into panic. At the center of the rebellion was a man named Spartacus, a gladiator, a slave, and eventually the leader of the largest slave uprising in Roman history. This is the story of Spartacus, the Gladiator rebellion, and the war that terrified Rome. Spartacus was likely born in Thrace, a region northeast of Greece in the Balkans. Very little is known about his early life. Most ancient historians wrote about Spartacus decades after his death, and many details remain uncertain. The Thracians were known throughout the ancient world as fierce tribal warriors. They frequently fought both alongside and against Rome. Ancient Roman writers claimed Spartacus may have once served as an auxiliary soldier in the Roman army before either deserting or rebelling against Roman authority. At some point, he was captured by the Romans, and in the Roman world, prisoners of war became property. Spartacus was sold into slavery. After being enslaved, Spartacus was eventually auctioned to a gladiator school in the city of Capua. The school was owned by a man named Lentulus Batiatus. Capua was famous for its gladiator training schools, where slaves and prisoners were trained to fight in arenas for public entertainment. To the Romans, gladiators were both admired and despised. Crowds loved watching them fight, but gladiators themselves were considered low status and disposable. Life inside the gladiator school was harsh. The gladiators lived under constant supervision inside barracks surrounded by walls and guards. Training was brutal. They practiced daily with wooden weapons heavier than real swords to build strength and endurance. Food was tightly controlled. Punishments were severe. Escape attempts were rare and dangerous. But the school unintentionally created highly trained fighters. Among Spartacus's fellow gladiators was a Gaul named Crixus. Crixus would eventually become one of Spartacus's closest commanders during the rebellion. Ancient writers described him as powerful, aggressive, and fearless in battle. Inside the gladiator school, Spartacus and Crixus likely trained together for months or possibly years before the revolt began, and eventually, the gladiators decided they would rather die fighting for freedom than continue living as slaves. In 73 BC, around 70 gladiators launched an escape from the school. According to ancient accounts, the rebellion may have begun earlier than planned after the conspiracy was discovered. The gladiators armed themselves with kitchen knives, cooking tools, and anything they could use as weapons. Then they attacked. They overwhelmed guards, escaped the school, and seized wagons carrying gladiator weapons. Spartacus, Crixus, and several other gladiators quickly emerged as leaders of the escape. The fugitives fled toward Mount Vesuvius near the Bay of Naples. At first, Rome did not take the rebellion seriously. The Roman Senate viewed the escaped gladiators as little more than criminals and runaway slaves. Small local militias were sent to destroy them. Instead, the rebels defeated them. More escaped slaves, shepherds, laborers, and poor farmers began joining Spartacus's growing army. Within months, the rebellion had transformed from a small escape into a major uprising. One of the rebellion's most famous early victories occurred near Mount Vesuvius. Roman forces trapped the rebels near the summit of the mountain and believed escape was impossible. But Spartacus developed a plan. The rebels wove vines into ropes and climbed down steep cliffs the Romans believed could not be crossed. Then they circled behind the Roman camp and launched a surprise attack. The Roman militia collapsed. The victory shocked Rome. For the first time, the Republic realized the rebellion was becoming dangerous. As Spartacus's army grew, so did its ambitions. Thousands of slaves joined the rebellion from across southern Italy. Captured Roman weapons armed the rebels. Roman armor was stripped from defeated soldiers. Military discipline slowly developed within the rebel army. And battle after battle Rome suffered humiliating defeats. As the rebellion expanded, Spartacus and Crixus became its two most important leaders. But the two men may not have agreed on the future of the rebellion. Ancient historians suggest Spartacus may have wanted to lead the army north across the Alps so escaped slaves could disperse and return home. Crixus and many of his followers reportedly wanted to remain in Italy, continue raiding Roman territory, and keep fighting Rome directly. Eventually, Crixus separated from Spartacus with a large force of followers, possibly tens of thousands of men. This division weakened the rebellion. Roman forces quickly moved against Crixus. In 72 BC, Crixus and much of his army were defeated and killed in battle by Roman troops. Ancient sources claim Spartacus later honored Crixus by forcing captured Roman soldiers to fight gladiator-style combats during funeral rites for the fallen commander. Even after Crixus's death, Spartacus continued defeating Roman armies and moving across Italy. For a time, it seemed possible that Rome might completely lose control of the situation. By now, the Roman Republic realized this was no ordinary slave revolt. Entire Roman armies had been defeated by escaped slaves. Panic spread among wealthy Roman landowners throughout Italy. Rome responded by giving command to Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the richest and most powerful men in the Republic. Crassus rebuilt Roman discipline harshly. One punishment known as decimation forced soldiers accused of cowardice to execute 1 out of every 10 men in their own unit. The message was clear: Rome would not fail again. Crassus pushed Spartacus south through Italy and attempted to trap the rebel army near the southern peninsula around Rhegium. Massive trenches and fortifications were built to contain the rebels. Food shortages spread through Spartacus's camp. The rebellion was beginning to collapse under pressure. Despite being trapped, Spartacus managed to break through parts of the Roman fortifications during a storm. But the rebel army was weakening. Internal divisions continued. Supplies were limited. Roman armies closed in from multiple directions. In 71 BC, Spartacus prepared for a final battle against Crassus. According to ancient legend, Spartacus killed his own horse before the battle. He supposedly told his men that if they won, he would have many horses. If they lost, he would need none. Then the battle began. Ancient writers claimed Spartacus fought fiercely and attempted to reach Crassus himself during the fighting, but the Roman legions eventually overwhelmed the rebel army. The battle turned into a massacre. Spartacus disappeared during the fighting, and his body was never conclusively identified. After the final defeat, thousands of surviving rebels attempted to flee. Roman forces hunted them down across southern Italy. Around 6,000 captured followers of Spartacus were crucified along the Appian Way between Capua and Rome. The crosses stretched mile after mile along the road. It became one of the largest mass executions in Roman history. The crucifixion served as a warning to anyone who might challenge Roman authority. Rome intended to erase the rebellion through fear. Instead, Spartacus became immortal in history. Spartacus lost the war, but his rebellion exposed a terrifying weakness inside Roman society. The Roman Republic depended heavily on slavery. For nearly 2 years, escaped slaves forced Rome into panic and humiliation. Centuries later, Spartacus would become a symbol of resistance, freedom, and rebellion against oppression. The man Rome once called a slave would outlive the Republic itself. Spartacus died in battle. Crixus died fighting Rome. Thousands of rebels were crucified. The rebellion was destroyed. But the story survived. And more than 2,000 years later, the name Spartacus is still remembered. History is more than stories from the past. It's the foundation of the world we live in today. Every empire, every war, every great leader changed the course of human civilization in ways that still shape our lives today. If you're fascinated by ancient history, legendary battles, forgotten civilizations, powerful rulers, and the rise and fall of empires, subscribe and join us as we uncover the real stories behind humanity's greatest moments. Because the past is never truly gone, and there's always more history waiting to be discovered.